Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. What is the silliest reason you've ever had to fire a staff member? Part 2. An intern of mine got into arguments about effing everything. It was like a 22-year-old version of my little brother as an early teen. This guy lasted 3 days. Although I am a very patient person, you have to remember that I'm your boss and not your mother. You still have to follow my instructions when I give them, but I'll treat you with respect and be kind and understanding toward you, just like I do with all my staff, because I believe it's the right thing to do and improves the working environment for everyone. Just doing it is all that's required. There's no discussion of why you shouldn't, what you think you should do, or who else should do it. Don't tell me you already know what I'm telling you, or that you think you know a better way. You came here on day 1, and for some reason, you believe I ought to follow your advice. You're here to learn from me as an intern. Really, this guy actually had a job once. Like, he worked for someone and wasn't kicked in the process. I had a lengthy conversation with him about how he refused to follow instructions and argued about everything after attempting to be tactful and work things out. He responded to me believing that his arguments were entirely legitimate by saying things like, "But I do take direction, but I don't argue about everything, but that wasn't my fault, and I do listen." I grimaced deeply. "You're doing it now, dude. You two continue to argue." "I'm not," and but. I simply walked away from him, waving my arms in the air as he continued to try to reason with me. I was about to tell him that if he said "but" one more time, I would very strongly put my foot inside his butt, but instead, I just shook my head in shock and turned to leave. I'm still in total disbelief at this guy, so after about 5 minutes, he approaches me and says, "I think we can work through this. Can we talk about it?" I just stare at him blankly. "You're serious?" "Yeah, I think so," he begins. I break off. "Leave. There will be no further discussion." "But I'm sure you can visualize what I was saying with my hand and facial expression, but I can't really explain it. It was like this: what the actual F are you thinking?" I tell him again. "Leave. Now." That's right, the silliest reason I've ever had to fire someone was plain ignorance. The guy traveled a great distance for this internship as part of his university education, and although it was only meant to last a few days, he was leaving for home. I still find it hard to believe that someone could be that naive. Felt a little sorry for him. Although I've worked with and managed a lot of staff in the past, I've never encountered anyone quite like this guy whose catchphrase of "but" still haunts me. For 10 years, I was employed at a chain of video game stores. I was a football for a while. I was thrown into any opening that presented itself. Frequently, it was because someone had been let go recently or was about to be let go. Here are a handful of the more noteworthy ones. The employee was fired because he would constantly chastise and make fun of elderly customers who would come in looking for batteries, mistakenly believing that we were Radio Shack, which was next door. Came to such a pass that Radio Shack asked us to post signs alerting customers that we were not them. The night manager would repeatedly tuck deposits behind the register because she did not feel comfortable making deposits by herself at that hour. I was the part-time non-manager at the time, and I ended up taking tens of thousands of dollars to the bank because she closed multiple nights in a row. An employee set up a donation bucket where people could put their change and we would run a transaction for a donation when it added up to $1. We took donations the same way a grocery store did at the time. Scan a slip and $1 added to the transaction total. She was caught red-handed because she frequently used the change to purchase candy bars from the vending machines. An employee exchanged stolen games for cash at other stores. Despite knowing he had been doing it, the store struggled to apprehend him. In the end, they recorded them on camera, putting a sticker that said "stolen" beneath one of the slip covers of a game the worker had expressed interest in. He took it, went to my shop, and even mentioned that the sticker was there when he traded it in. Although they let him go, the business declined to file charges. I was transferred to the other store until they found a replacement after the manager there resigned. That guy was the reason we were discovering missing stock for months. A worker would open packs of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, remove the money cards, swap them out for worthless commons, and then use the shrink-wrap machine to seal the packs again. He boasted about it to a worker at a different mall store that offered those cards. An employee of the other store called corporate. Companies occasionally provide free game copies to realtors. It's not permitted for us to resell them. The manager of one store persuaded the shift manager of another store to permit him to return some games for cash without a receipt. He was accompanied by his girlfriend. Other than two regular hangout kids, they were the only people in the store that evening. A snowstorm was in the midst of it. He would have gotten away with it if his girlfriend hadn't called corporate to complain that I didn't help her quickly enough because I was playing Mario Party with the kids, which I totally was, and the district manager noticed the sealed games and began to inquire. His girlfriend received nothing, and he was fired. A customer entered to trade in his PS2. He claimed it was broken, but after learning it was worthless, he started yelling and threatening the staff in front of other customers and left. When a seasonal worker heard us discussing it the following day, he realized the client was his boss from his previous seasonal position at a hat shop in a different neighborhood mall. The customer/boss was barred from all of our stores, the mall where our store was located, and his store. I promise this is the last one. Staff members would pilfer games and trade them for free merchandise from neighboring stores. Presuming our entire store was in on the ring, an employee from one of the other stores came in to try and exchange out a stolen game they didn't like. The police and loss prevention were contacted. Regretfully, we're unsure of the precise number of employees who were arrested across multiple stores in the shopping center. As part of our health and wellness plan, our company does not allow people to use tobacco products on company property. There was plenty of notice, and employees were offered help by taking classes to stop smoking, getting discounts on Nicorette, and other things. This is something that all potential employees are told during the interview process, and all new employees sign a copy of the policy against smoking during orientation. All new employees are on probation for 90 days, during which time they can be fired for almost any reason. This guy is part of my night crew that I hired. He was smart and worked hard, but he just couldn't quit smoking. Once more, smoking is not allowed on company property. He was smoking when I saw him. I told him the rules, let him off the hook for a warning because he was new, and wrote down what we talked about. After about a week, I saw him smoking in his pickup truck in the employee parking lot right across the lot from my office window. I warned him in writing and called him into my office. I gave him a copy of the agreement he had agreed to. He broke the tobacco policy, which I told him was a stupid reason to be fired, but rules are rules and he needs to follow them. After about 2 weeks, I was late to work to get something I had forgotten, and I saw him smoking next to a car in the street. I saw him, and he saw me too. He put his cigarette down and crossed the car to the other side. I pulled over, got out, and asked him why he was light. He said he didn't smoke. As he stood there, I asked him why there was a lit cigarette there. He said it wasn't his, and he had no idea where it came from. He thought I was stupid, but I told him that lying would not help him. He kept saying that it wasn't his cigarette. I told him we'd meet when he got home from work the next day at 5 p.m. The next day, he told me he was sorry for lying and didn't know why. I told him that was his third offense in his first 90 days, and that was that. I let him go. He is one of 2 employees I fired for disobeying a simple rule. I can't imagine having to go home and tell my significant other that I was fired because I couldn't follow a tobacco policy. How did you come to the realization that the COA, HOA, and neighbors are jerks? Part 2. The person next door is a real jerk. My apartment building has 4 units. I'm not sure what you'd call it. There are 2 on top and 2 below, and the backyard shared. My building is the middle 3. There are 2 parking spots for each apartment. My mother and sister took me in after I lost my job. I let them use the spots because it made sense, and I parked across the street. The building on the left is right where the 4-way stop is. After his main yard, where the sidewalk ends, there's a 10-foot wide strip of grass. The main thing that makes me angry with him is where I park. I park next to that strip of grass, the side closest to the passenger. 3 different groups, the police, his landlord, and the city, all told me I was okay to park there. On a public street like this, I'm not blocking any driveways, cars, trash cans, or other things. He's a middle-aged man who's having trouble. He isn't the landlord, but has tried trespassing me from his property for cutting across that section of grass the day after I had a tooth pulled. I was in a ton of pain and was forced to come into work. Plus, it was snowing and freezing outside, so I could cut across it, but my footprints were left in the snow. He's damaged my pickup, leaves threatening letters on it, tried getting it towed at least once a week, claiming it's an abandoned vehicle, mows his yard at 10 p.m., uses his leaf blower at ungodly hours, threatens me and my family, yells and screams at us, and just acts all around like a child with anger issues. People used to treat me badly, but I got sick of it. I'm a very calm and non-confrontational person. He's used to forcing other people to give in, but I've stuck to my guns. You can treat me however you want, but I won't play when you go after my mom and sister. I learned that he had a warrant from the officer who was in charge of the situation at the time. Told me to call him as soon as we saw him. As soon as I saw that jerk, I told someone about him. He was locked up for a month and a half. I'm glad it happened around the same time that my grandfather and stepfather died. If it hadn't been for that, the extra stress of him would have made me snap. He's been quiet so far, and I haven't seen him much, but I've been parking across the street to tell him to shut up. I don't mind HOAs too much as long as they're not stupidly rigid or bureaucratic. The computer in my old car said that a few things were not ready when I took it in for the emissions test to be fixed. The person testing it said it was likely because I had recent work done and my battery had been disconnected for a while. This caused the computer to reset and lose data records. This could be fixed by continuing to drive the car. Unfortunately, my HOA has a rule that says a car can't be parked in our complex without a valid registration. This is to stop people from parking broken down cars in the lot. The first day my tag was obviously expired, they put a big adhesive sticker on my driver's side window that said "in violation" and had a letter attached explaining the rule. I took off the sticker with a paint scraper, leaving behind a lot of glue. I wrote to the letter to explain my situation, and then I put it under my windshield wiper. The letter was gone the next day, and there was a nice new GD sticker on my window. This time, I called the management company our HOA hires and complained, mostly about how they were putting opaque effing stickers on the windows of my car, which I thought was an insult to my property. They said they would talk to the HOA board about it. The next day, I got a new sticker and an email from the management company telling me that the HOA wouldn't give me any more time. But I kept going back every day to get my car retested, but it kept giving me the same not ready answer for a few things. Basically, I can't legally drive my car because the registration's expired, but the only way to get it renewed is to drive it enough so that it passes the emissions test. As if that wasn't bad enough, some jerk that I never caught was putting stickers on my car every day on the HOA's orders, even though my car ran fine and was my daily driver. The HOA believed this rule was necessary to keep broken down cars out of the lot. Also, I bought a new car and will be leaving that neighborhood in the next few months. For the old car, a 2005 WRX, I just took it back to the shop to fix a few things before selling it. I ended up leaving it there for about a year until one of the mechanics called and offered to buy it from me. The president of the HOA and his wife, who worked as the treasurer, paid us a visit after we had purchased our home. They informed us that, in fact, there's an HOA and that we were responsible for paying annual dues. I told them in a very polite manner that I did not acknowledge their authority and that they should leave my property. In the sense that a large number of younger couples were purchasing homes in the neighborhood was undergoing an age regeneration. In the middle of the 1950s, the subdivision was initially developed and the bylaws were voted in at that time and have remained unchanged ever since. Therefore, let's fast forward to the following year when the President and First Lady made the decision to pay another visit to my home in order to inform me that we had fallen behind on our payments and that a lien would be placed on our property if we did not bring our payments up to date. I made the decision to go around to the younger neighbors in order to form a quorum, vote out the board, elect a temporary board consisting of 3 people to amend the bylaws, remove any dues or penalty system, and finally disband the board. The bylaws have been amended in such a way that a quorum can be formed and a temporary board can be appointed by a majority vote in the event that any issues arise that pertain to a section of the subdivision that is at least 25% of the total. This will continue until the issue is resolved or the board is no longer required. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. We're very, very glad to see you all in the comments again. Many, many thanks for your support.